contribute the bit we can to improve the welfare of all of us, including those that may not be in the same political party or are affiliates to any political party. At the end of the day, we're all Zambians. We compete in terms of ideas. We compete in terms of what we think will be the best approach to move this country forward. But the attitude and what the UPND have exhibited in terms of being, vindictive, undertaking, retribution, and basically which, undertaking, a crusade of or a witch hunt towards those that think are their opponents is really beyond what anybody can ever imagine or ever think will happen in our lifetime and in this generation.
For argument's sake, Honorable SG, when you look at all these arrests that, of course, have followed you, the people in power, a few years ago, the party front, a number of leaders that have been arrested, others have been jailed as we speak right now. Don't you think that this must be a point of return, or perhaps a point of reflection, to reflect back, say perhaps maybe you are paying for your evil that you might have committed while you were in power? Why should we be witnessing all these arrests and others being convicted as we speak today? Don't you think maybe you did evil or you did damage to this country?
Okay, let's take KBN for example. He's been a businessman all his life. Zambia knows that. The only sin the man committed was to have ventured into politics and was privileged to be in government and served as defense minister. At the time that he was defense minister, there were all kinds of propaganda stories against him and his business, which business was not established at the time that he was in government, but established way many years before he even got into government. And we also operate in Zambia under the principle of the fact that when you register a legal entity like a company, it assumes its own personality. Okay, yes, you may have shares, you may have interest in a company, but a company has its own personality. So if one of the directors or indeed shareholders or anybody decides at personal level to venture into politics, they don't drag that company into their politics. And if they, in this case, continue to do business, and if they were engaged in business, government or anything like that, don't expect that then you commingle the personality or character of the company with that of an individual who's in government. But when you look at the parameters that were used for him to be convicted, is basically wanting to suggest that the fact that he got into politics and was in government, he stopped being in government. I mean, he stopped being a businessman. We have not had any law after 1990 that forbids any citizen from engaging in business. Even civil servants are permitted to engage in business. Of course, there are ethical issues that arise for you to be able not to abuse your government position and moral issues and so on. But insofar as a formal business, a company and so on, is supposed to run as an entity. So that's one issue that I would leave for the Zambian people to be able to examine. I'm here. I'm facing issues to do with exposing governments, for example, interference with the judiciary. When you look at the time that we started pointing out the fact that the judiciary is under risk, and today, I think the Zambian people have seen that maybe we, as whistleblowers, were not really taken seriously at the beginning. But what is happening to the judiciary today, everybody is concerned. I was privileged yesterday to have escorted His Excellency, the 60th President, Dr. Edgar Chagalungu, to the American Day, or to witness, obviously, the election process that is underway in the U.S. His Excellency Ambassador to designate to Zambia from the U.S. expressed himself yesterday, and in talking about the democratic processes in America and what was going on, he also spoke to the fact that having some of the critical partners of Zambia, they are concerned that the same way obviously is expected that the institutions of government are protected and are left to operate professionally and independent of the influence of whether the executive, politicians or anybody. It is expected also in Zambia. And one of the critical institutions that he talked about is the judiciary. And obviously we will not be discussing and raising concern if there was nothing wrong with where the judiciary in this country is operating today. Other people, commentators, have said that if you have in your country or jurisdiction a situation where the police are being abused by politicians who are in government, and then the judiciary too, and the other institutions related to the justice system are being abused, it means that now we are going to promote a situation where the corrupt, those who are involved in fraud and criminal activities, will be protected by the judiciary because they are using the judiciary to cover themselves. They will be protected by the police because they are using the police to cover themselves. And those who are courageous to speak against their ills will suffer the fate of being arrested and imprisoned because the police, the judiciary, everybody is being abused to advance or aid the agenda of those who are in government. That's what's happening in this country. Today is predictable when when a PF member is arrested, that, and those who are critical to this government, when they are arrested, they will be presented to a particular court in the sub-court. That when their matter goes to the High Court, there is a system, for example, in Lusaka, that guarantees that when a matter that involves Patriotic Front and other opposition political parties, it will move to a certain named judges who, when that matter goes, you even know the outcome. The predictability of the outcome of these cases are on the basis that these are inclined towards advancing the agenda of those who are in government today, the UPND. And that is very sad, because I must say the reason why some of us are passionate speaking against the idea of interfering with the judiciary is that the judiciary is a sacred entity of any society or any nation, to which every citizen is supposed to have confidence that when they go there, justice is guaranteed. The moment that is lost, it's now survival of the fittest, survival of the strongest. So you are pushing citizens to get into the street to sort out their issues, because when they go to court, they know they will not get anything. I have to go and fight my way to guarantee that my children who have an opportunity to still participate either in the economy or the governance of this country, or indeed have some space to do whatever they want in their own country. That's not the route we're supposed to go. Systems themselves should be able to guarantee that. Institutions of government should be able to guarantee that. And that is what basically we should be advocating for. So when you look at PF, Boma Nusambo today was not only sentenced, when there was an application, which is supposed to be straightforward application, we have a judicial system that guarantees or gives every citizen an opportunity, if they are not satisfied with the decision of the court, to go to higher courts. And we operate under the Constitution. Is it Article 8 that guarantees that every human being must be deemed innocent until proven guilty. So when you go before the subcourt and they make a decision and you decide, I'm not satisfied, I have appealed, that appeal in itself, that notice of appeal in itself, should be able to bring you back to the status of the fact that you are innocent until proven what? Guilty, because you are going to a higher court. Why should it be that the judicial system seems to suggest that you don't have the right to argue your case, whether in the subordinate court or going? Now we are having lower courts refusing to have people to go to higher courts. Even when it comes to matters, for example, that do not bother on taking people's liberties away. We had the Mama Esther Lungu's case, where First of all, before the High Court, she was denied to cross-examine witnesses. She was denied to bring other witnesses to come and testify. And then a verdict is, meted out. And then she's denied an opportunity for her to appeal or be heard. She had to go to the Court of Appeal to actually seek that the High Court be ordered for them to have this matter heard fairly. That is exposing the very ills that we're talking about. And therefore, my appeal this evening will be to all of us Zambians, because the people that are in the judiciary come from our, from us within our society, those who are in the police, those who are in all these institutions. Is it a reflection of who we are? Cowards, those who are timid, who cannot stand up and stick to principle and professionalism regardless of the attempts by others to interfere? Who are the men and women, noble men and women in the judiciary, in the police, in all these institutions, who can say, I would rather keep a good name and maintain my integrity than succumb to the interference of politicians and those who are elites, who may not tomorrow be able to stand with me as I account for the misdeeds and things that I may have done, influenced by them, but I had the opportunity to make a judgment or decision whether I can go by their suggestion or not. There must be nobility. There must be people who are in the judiciary whose pride lies in the fact that they have executed their duty professionally, observing all ethics, and they have meted out justice not because it was suggested or influenced by anybody, but because they have adhered to the law. Those men and women are the ones we are seeking and looking for at this time, and such a time as this, when we have a dictator in State House and a UPND that is incorrigible, whose view that they cannot convince the Zambian people to continue voting for them or to have them continue in government without playing what they are calling Mingarot. And if such pronouncements are coming from the highest office of the land, that Mingarot basically means dribbling, using dubious means to be able to advance your interests. The president has said you used Mingarot against the opposition. What has been the Mingarot? Interfering with the operation of the opposition political party, sponsoring a splinter group, having people through the shenanigans of the police and everybody to try and stage a coup, staged and supported and sponsored by the state themselves, having the police to protect and get people to undertake a fraudulent or criminal enterprise with their protection. The ones who are supposed to arrest. This is a very sad state of affairs in the Republic of Zambia. In 60 years down the line, we are not expected to degenerate to these levels. It was expected that 60 years after independence would have refined our governance system, would have actually refined and polished our politics and democracy, so that we become a shining star. Having been a pioneer from 1964, we were pioneers in being in the front, among the frontline states in terms of fighting for the liberation of the continent. Dr. Kaunda was one of the highly respected statesmen on the continent because of the role he played in the liberation struggle. Dr. Chiluba and his team were, pioneers of the reintroduction of democracy on the continent. I mean, when it comes to the economic structure of this, of our country, we became a model on many fronts. Ask Venon Mwanga how many countries he has been privileged to be requested as a resource person to structure governance institutions. Arabia at some point was even more or less, seconded by the UN to actually be an interim leader of Namibia because of the fact that Zambia was a shining star in the SADC region and on the continent of Africa. Today we are laughing stock, and you and me must be concerned, and those who are watching us this particular evening.
There is a perception and a different view, Honorable SG, where the system, or perhaps those in power, or those who are in the ruling party, are accusing you or perceiving you to be, to be taking, or rather to be antagonistic to the governments in your quest to offer checks and balances. And people say, look, you can still offer your checks and balances, but in a sober manner, in a very professional manner, in a, an approach which will be acceptable not the approach where you are being antagonistic, you in particular as SG Nachinda, and also the PF in general. Hence, a number of you have landed yourself, for example, in police cells.
What have we done wrong? What is wrong about telling Mr. Nachinda to stop what he's doing that is affecting the Zambian people negatively?
By calling President Nachinda as a dictator,
yes,
that we have a dictator in State House.
That's
so
my,
do you think that's being antagonistic?
How can it be antagonistic when in fact that is my view? When I look at his style of governance and what he has done so far, my opinion is that he's a dictator. A Democrat doesn't do what he does. A Democrat can't pass a statutory instrument to have the police and all other law enforcement agencies to be under his direct control. And therefore, the work of the police, raiding homes and going to seize properties without even investigations of people just because they were PF and they were in PF government, and all this that people have suffered under the UPND, it's only a dictator who can do that. A Democrat allows institutions of government, law enforcement agencies to operate at least, as autonomous organizations or institutions. If that's not the case, actually the greatest of all should be independent institutions without interference. They should be able to investigate at their own volition. They should be able to initiate investigations, arrests, and so on, not instructed, not directed, that, oh, Nachinda, look at what he has spoken, I don't like it. You have a president who's so emotional that when you call him out, he instructs the police to arrest. That's childish. That's having a leader who has no spine, who has a spaghetti spine. Mwanawasa had to whip himself and end up pronouncing under the vicious, critical, effective opposition leader in Michael Sat. He said to the Zambian people, I am not cabbage, I am steak. I have a thick skin. I can contend and withstand all manner of criticism, but I'll focus on delivering for the Zambian people. This government, particularly their leader, is weak, is emotional. That's why for 3 years he has only been preaching one message: PF Edgar Lungu, PF Edgar Lungu, PF Edgar Lungu. You ask him, you told us that the dollar, Kwacha will gain strength the moment you are sewn in at 10, 14 hours, says Edgar. And the UPND. It has become a national anthem. And the way we operate in Zambia is that because we run a presidential system, what a president says becomes police. So everybody else behaves like they are zombies. They even know that what the president is saying is not correct, but they will repeat it. Look at how Madam Nanumango, a reverend, somebody who is seasoned, she was in parliament for 2 terms, minister for information and other portfolios she held. She was even deputy speaker. She has immense, experience. But because she is serving under a president who is so weak, so unstable, without any focus, she is made like she doesn't think. She answers on a Friday, it's a circus. Actually, the moment they start the Friday, vice president question, I switch off the TV. Because I can't withstand seeing a mother, a reverend, embarrassing herself like that. No one can ever manage to manage the dollar, the exchange rate. Where was she getting that notion from? They came into government on the premise that they will be able to manage the exchange rate. Their president was even saying it is abominable to have the kwacha against the dollar go to the extent of being in the 15, 16 up to the 20, 20 to $1. That's what you're saying. And he says, when I come, just by virtue of the confidence the people who have in my presidents, it will reduce to less than 10 kwacha, between 10 and 14 hours. When you hold this president to that standard he set for himself, you have committed an offense, you have to be arrested. He says that he was committing himself to the rule of law. How can you say the rule of law? We have, for example, a council chairperson who was arrested and convicted in Kawambwa. He has appealed. He went to court and obtained, he has applied for bail. But he also went to court and obtained a stay that ECZ does not proceed to have a by-election in because still representing the people of Kawambwa. They ignore the stay, ignore the decisions of the High Court. They decide to proceed to have an illegal election in Kawambwa. And you say that you believe in the rule of law? I mean, that is, who are you cheating? Who are you trying to really, they think like, Zambians are just zombies. They can't think, they can't process. The only thing I know about Zambians is that they wait for you. And the time will come when Zambians will show the UPND their real position and feeling over the abuses they have subjected Zambian people so far in 3 years.
We have a government in place which seems to be very determined and very, solid in what they do. And President Akande is actually advised his lieutenants that you have to be strong, regardless of the criticism that you're going to face along the way. People are going to mock you, but we have to remain resolute to what we do, because we are here to work on behalf and to the benefits of the people of Zambia by ensuring that the rule of law is maintained or restored, as well as eventually, or in return, improve the cost of living. When we hear those sentiments and the solidness of the UPND and President Akande and his regime, what comes in your mind as a party front?
What comes in our mind as PF and what comes in my mind as an individual, going by the nomenclatures you have used, is that first of all, UPND is solid in wrongdoing and determined in doing and occasioning harm to the Zambian people. So if you are going to describe UPND as a solid government, they are only solid in wrongdoing. They are only determined in doing wrong. Nothing else. Even when Mr. Hakainde has been embarrassed by his interference in PF, imposing Mao Sampa as a leader, and as it were, he has been exposed to the Zambian people. He has publicly gone with Chabinga and others to try and pronounce them as leaders of PF. Without any shame, in one breath you'll be denying, in another breath encouraging the same. The police, people like Jack Mwimbo, have reduced all the respect that Jack Mwimbo people had for him when he was the leader of opposition and also a member of parliament. For the 20 years, now he's going to 25 years, has been rubbished because the guy doesn't even behave like he's a lawyer. He can't even oppose or guide his president that what you're asking me to do, you can never do. We are having, suggestions and reports suggesting that him and his peers, Mutambo or somebody, they are sitting, at Home Affairs to try and interfere with the registers of political parties. Home Affairs Minister. If those rumors are true, people would say that, this country has gone to the dogs. Maybe we should change. The dogs have come to the country. Because really you don't expect a government that believes in the rule of law to undertake such activities, because that is criminal. You understand? But Mr. Hakainde is actually proud of that. He would even carry MPs, and we had an embarrassing situation in Northwestern Province where he carried some fellow from Chadiza, this Jonathan Daka, with him to Northwestern. He's telling his ADC, tell him to introduce himself as Vice President of PF. Are you sure, APS, IP? I almost called you IPS, IP. You were seated here, when you close your eyes, you can actually be convinced or convicted that there is any person by the name of Jonathan Daka who is Vice President of PF. How did he become Vice President of PF? That is basically a president who, they say, Alishe Tenson. He can do such a terrible, embarrassing thing in the full view of cameras. You know what he did? His ADC goes to tell Jonathan. I think he didn't hear the instruction properly. Jonathan continues to talk. The president is not satisfied. He steps down and tells the ADC, tell him to introduce himself as vice president. Even in Mingalato itself, he doesn't know. Cheap village in Mingalato. You are thinking like you are actually in a village where he's not even sophisticated, and people actually lie to him because every attempt to do what he wants to do is exposed because of the fact that he's such a cheap, these UPND people are just a cheap group of people who are determined to stay in power, but they don't even have the tact of winning the Zambian people on their side.
And how do you intend to, survive as a party front with all these things happening in your party? Whether the scenario given happened or not, but let's look at some of the members of parliament. We have seen them, getting along with the president, interacting with the president, and their reasons may be justifiable because they're saying, look, when you are a member of parliament under the opposition political party or under an opposition political party, you are not an enemy of the government or the president. So basically, it's not about the president or President Hakainde Hichilema carrying them or parading them. They are willingly going or traveling with the president for the sake of peace, unity, and also working together for the people of Zambia, and not a party,
No,
not PF.
of course there are some we have tried to talk to.
Yeah.
Some members of parliament I don't want to mention. We have tried to challenge them. What is this nonsense you are doing? They have some of them have been courageous to say, no. We have seen that this government is determined to try and destroy our party. So the strategy they have chosen, though some of it is not approved by the party, is to go and, like they say in other areas, get closer to your enemy, know what their schemes are and what they are planning, so that you can then find a way in which you can defend yourselves. So as far as we are concerned as a party, we have told some of them it's not necessary. But others feel that, enough is enough. So tuengirira bene, tubombe na bena, tube close na bena, nga twaishi wayonsama schemes obalete, then tukesa ishibya nshita tuka moving. So we are just laughing around the fact that there are others who have decided to deploy, don't go wherever. Get close, learn what they're doing, and come back.
Will the PF survive, really? Because time is running out.
Let me tell you.
A year plus before, and your house is not yet in order.
No.
I ask you a question, SG. I don't know if you're going to answer me or you'll be able to candidly answer. What have you done in the last 3 years in putting your political party together? Your party seems to be dismantled.
We have never lost focus.
Right.
That there are certificates that we obtain from the Judicial Society, right, that give us a name. But ultimately, the ideals and policies of Patriotic Front have been effectively sold out to the Zambian people. And the real PF is the people of Zambia. The real opposition for UPND is not the Judicial Society certificates. If that's why you focus, you have lost the plot. For us, we are moving with the Zambian people. And I can tell you, an experienced young politician, that UPND has been falling in the PF trap every other day. All we need is to provoke them by, for example, telling them that Edgar Chagwalungu is going to donate at Yunza. The entire police service will shift at Yunza. They fall in our trap. We have used the UPND emotional decisions to take the police to Yunza, to interact with the students. By the time they finish, after 3-4 days of camping there, the students are irritated and they're calling us. What is this nonsense? You mean Edgar can't come and even donate some? So no, Edgar now there's a memorial service of a former president, and we decide we're going to worship. It's our right and freedom of choice of assembly where we want to go and worship. You can't stop people. If I decide to celebrate the memory of my father under a tree, you see, in our village, or memorial, whatever you can call it, I can do it under a tree. I can do it in whatever style I want. The government cannot stop me. And friends and colleagues and those who worked with Mr. Sata decided he was a Catholic, therefore we're going to worship at a Catholic church. We knew that the way we know Aka in the Ichirema, he's going to send the police. What happened that morning? The cathedral of the child Jesus was flooded with the police. When we were going there, we were smiling. And I can tell you, Mr. Musamba is a perfect candidate to campaign for us. Mr. Musamba is a good man. He's a good campaign manager. I don't need to go anywhere as SG to campaign. All I need is to press 1 or 2 buttons. He will be everywhere in town campaigning for us. So Lusaka town we have taken over, because all we do is to announce that we have a press briefing, for example, at the Secretariat. There will be tankers there. Do you know who is irritated and inconvenienced? The people are coming from compounds who are suffering and trying just to make ends meet. They just want to go and get do a little transaction, maybe 50 kwacha for them to buy a Pamela. They find tankers and tear gases sometimes thrown around because the PF, they decided they're going to have a press briefing at their own office. So Misaka in the Ichirema and Mr. Musamba are good tools. And I thank God for President Edgar Chagarum, because he is so smart that he is playing his politics without even moving. He is deploying the police and others to go and campaign for him. When he says, I'm going to church, the police come and irritate everybody in church by wanting to stop him from going to church. We're having a press briefing tomorrow. Everybody has already been trying to do, what should we do to stop this? They have gone to the lodge where there's a press briefing that has to do with the launch or announcement of tons and so on. They want to intimidate the owner of the lodge. Are you telling me that the owner of the lodge will be supportive to this government having been for just a simple business of hosting a press briefing? And even tomorrow, they will fall into the trap. They may send the police, and they'll be glad to come and interact with the police. It will continue showing to the Zambian people how brutal this government is.
Let's imagine if elections are called today. Let's just assume we have a general election tomorrow, and you as a patriotic front, you have to contest. What will you do?
Don't worry.
The vehicle here seems to be divided.
No.
It's like natural open and PF. Anyone can wake up, IP can wake up tomorrow and say, I'm a president of the PF.
No.
And the narrative will go on like that.
Na mwisho ba IP tule kubako serious na tukala muno mustude tamkweta malaiti ama yako ni eno tale bomba tulikuwa tuli mu hit up they sweating up, but I'm still just trying to advance the argument for Zambian people to hear. But we are suffering the anguish. I am convinced that after 1 hour of interviewing me under this environment and this heat, I don't think you are going to be going home proudly saying you are going to vote for UPND. The heat we are feeling here can't compare to the heat the Zambian people are experiencing and suffering out there. Okay? So for us, we would rather be on the side of the Zambian people. But in terms of the strategy around the vehicle, don't worry about that. Right. Mr. Aka in the Ichirema, we will take him on, and very soon we'll be taking him to the cleaners. It's only people who are not strategic that discuss everything in public. When PF decides to issue a statement, decides to send something on the blogs, it's calculated. And the UPND have perfectly fallen into the trap because they react to everything on social media.
Let's talk about the US elections. We followed this interesting debate and activities in USA where Donald Trump, I don't know, I keep on mentioning Joe Biden. Donald Trump, when he announced his comeback, it sounded like it was a taboo. It was a joke. He ran with it, and the system tried to stop him from contesting, the elections. But eventually, he pushed himself further on the ballot. As we speak today, the man has been declared as winner, or the 47th president of USA. What does it mean to you as a patriotic front and the opposition in Zambia, or perhaps in Africa in general?
Let me, I think you're saying you're using long terminologies. He pushed himself. No, it's the people of the United States of America that pushed him.
Right.
They demanded for him. They supported him. The system, the Democrats attempted not only to block him through judicial lawfare, they also attempted through what we witnessed, you know, to eliminate him. Attempted the assassins. Is it 2, 3, 4 times? 3 times.
3 times.
One where he was physically harmed, others where obviously before any fatal action was taken, they were prevented. Okay? That's what happens when a government is desperate. Okay? So for us, first of all, we congratulate Donald Trump. And you've noticed that Africa has celebrated his victory.
Why should it be so?
Purely because of 2 things,
Right.
or 3 things. One, Donald Trump, when he was president, he made it very clear that he didn't want to interfere in the internal affairs of other countries. And when he came to Africa, he said the heavy-handedness of the West, particularly America, in determining, you know, not only policy but the governance processes, including elections and so on, he will not tolerate that. Let Africa deal with his problems. Actually, he was even saying, this tube or bottle you have been feeding from America of aid and so on has spoiled you people. You have enough resources, you can actually self-determine in terms of the economy and other things. So I'm going to pull it off. Let that money, the welfare of Americans, also find your own resources. He said that in many ways than one. At some point, he even used crude words, which people cried about. But in principle, you're saying, can you, as Africans, wake up, use your resources, work? You have competent, you know, citizens now. In view of the fact that you have been able to educate the citizenry, you have some of the brilliant engineers on the globe. Do you know that the health sector in the US is run by Africans? Most of the doctors, nurses, and all these who provide health services, most of them are Africans. Even the financial sector, now you're having the Africans being more dominant. And all that, mining and otherwise, we have exported more human resource out there who are running big entities, but they are not utilized on the continent. They are not utilized in Zambia. We should be ashamed of ourselves. Therefore, because of that progressive policy that seems to be penny temporarily at the initial stage, some of us believe that Trump is the right man to be in such a very powerful global office of White House or Oval Office. 2, for Africans, there are certain values and cultural norms that are difficult to compromise. For Zambia, which is even declared a Christian nation, to ever think that somebody would wake up from somewhere and try and impose on us alien, you know, abominable values like LGBT rights and all that the Democrats through was trying to advance. When she visited Africa, you heard what she said when she was in Ghana. You heard what she said when she was in Tanzania. You heard her attempts to try and make pronouncements here in Zambia over LGBT. For the first time after she visited, this government had the police escort and protect a procession of those who are advocating for LGBT with their flags. It has never happened on the soils of this country. It's abominable. And some of us believe that maybe that's how come things are so tough for this government, because they are pretending they associated with the organizations like the Foundation for the Soros, who are clearly advancing these values. Misaka Indechinem and his government have proudly associated with this. At the State House now, we have the Tony Blair Foundation having very serious interaction and actually unity, policy unity that is actually there. But Tony Blair is an ambassador of what? LGBT things. We have ended up entangling ourselves in abominable, alliances and associations. A country that has covenanted with God. When I saw the Ichrema in his speech attempting to present himself like he's praying, God, you know that we're just agents, give us rain, and so on. Even the demeanor itself didn't demonstrate that this is a man with a sense of reverence towards God, that he could actually present a petition in that manner. At the platform itself was wrong. It's an hypocritical way of wanting to present the needs of the Zambian people before God that is so sovereign. And let's not joke around such things. These are people who were lambasting President Lungu for declaring a day of national prayer, reconciliation, and forgiveness. These are people who are lambasting President Lungu for actually attempting to build the house of God as a symbol of our reverence and appreciation that God rules in the affairs of men. They were debating on the floor of Parliament, mocking the day, mocking all these attempts. Now they are stuck. That's when they want to actually go to God and say, can you help us? But what is even more revealing about the hypocrisy of these people, 2 days after President HH was trying to pray on that day when they were assigning that useless... Are you
saying he was trying to pray?
Yes, trying to pray. Well, he was trying to pray because I think it was just an afterthought during his speech that let me say something that to try and impress people. Because if it was a prayer and he really respects his communion with God, it would have been in an appropriate manner, in an appropriate stage. It should have been intentional. It can't be flip-flopping. And because it was flip-flopping a knee-jerk, attempts to engage God, he also attempted to engage other gods. When he went to a traditional ceremony and says, you chiefs used to have powers to call rains, can you call rains? So we don't know whether he wants the traditional powers or he wants God's power to be in this Republic of Zambia. But that's what happens when you are not focused and you don't know where you stand. You can't define what your conviction is, whether you're a Christian or not. And that's how come possibly we need to examine these things. I don't want to start, pitching in any way in terms of examining his faith, because ultimately Jesus is not a crowd savior, he's a personal savior. So it's up to him, but we can only judge and know him by the fruits. And the fruits are seen in what he says and his actions. His level of vengeance, his level of retribution, his level of vindictiveness doesn't speak to some of the things he professes. And possibly that's where we are.
Joe Biden and his administration ruled America for a single term. Something that seems to be quite, becoming so familiar in so many countries today, including back home here in Africa. What is the reason why we see this regime change within a term? A leader is sent packing.
You see, there is an awakening globally. Young people, citizens, we're in an era where information is flying at supersonic speed. And those of us who are seeking for office through democratic means must know that we have to up the game. They up the game in the sense that, first of all, you must know that you're under the spotlight. There's nothing you can hide. The only way, currency for you to succeed in your political career is to be transparent and be honest. When you can't do something, just tell them. Don't try and say to the citizens that you are Superman, you are going to solve all this. Soon you'll be found out. The days of the Kaundas who would marginalize people by Chisokone, and people just remain impressed are long gone. Because when you are doing Chisokone, some young kid is on the WhatsApp, is on Instagram, is on X and all these social platforms and discover that that nonsense called Sokon is an abuse, that is not permissible in a democratic society. So to that effect, Mr. Nakinda's approach to governance and politics is archaic. It can't work today. It used to work in Kaunda, but he used to admire as politics that he wants to implement them today. He doesn't realize that having students on a Saturday in Copper Belt, you go and organize pupils to come and receive you at a function, it's an abuse. It may have worked in Kaunda days when we were growing up. We were all called, come to school, Dr. Kaunda is coming. It was such a great privilege to see that white handkerchief. We were hypnotized by that because we were not exposed to any information. That time there was no television. You understand what I'm saying? Tenzokura pamene madezi yako ati TV mulaini mwamene munkara maybe kulichapi wabili wana ma TV. Elo TV is soka pa 16 hours. Bavala pa 21 hours. Ija 16 hours ikakwana mwendo kupempa kutu mtame TV for neighbor. You have to go and bath first. So if you are a bit lazy around the water, you will not end up having the privilege to watch television. But today, TV is 24 hours. And those days there was only one channel. Today there are 500 channels, 800 channels. You understand what I'm saying? You are getting information from everywhere depending on what you are interested to know and learn. There are channels that are educative, that are informative, that do research on your behalf. The phones we use today, you can get any information at any given time. So people who are dealing with information at their fingertips, you can't handle them the way you are handling my grandfather, who only was tuning to Radio 1. And the Radio 1 news was coming maybe twice a day. And even that news was only Kaunda has done this, Kaunda has done this. And after that, after Fiabukaya is another joke, and that's all we are listening to stories on, oral teachings, through stories and Lutushim. That was what was on radio. But today, how many radio stations we have? We have numerous community radio stations. And even if you don't give licenses nowadays, people can have a radio and a studio and be able to broadcast on Facebook. So there's Mr. Nakinda, my brother, goes gwa ejija kuti ndiza jamu werensiki jamu muliba gaunda ngata jibereke suno modara. Come out of that primitive way of handling governance issues and politics, because you are imbalanced each and every day. Because sometimes you even wonder when the president speaks, is there anybody who is there to advise this president? You go and speak. If you are speaking during Kaunda days, you are in Wengwa or you are in Galomo or you are in Choma or anywhere in a traditional ceremony, and you go and speak, utibasa jinojindi kubenda matago, it will remain in your village. But today it can't. Now people are asking in Nurundaz, benda matago no chani kanzi. Ziliwuli zamina arunankula mondo. You understand what I'm saying? And then people begin to say, but what kind of insult is this? But maybe within the confines of your village, they may understand you. But actually, you know that some of those sayings emanate from stories and adages that spoke to the greediness of parents and other people those days. There is a saying that when you say Benda Matago, indeed that Tata Ureatwe, it's a story in a book that talks of a greedy father who went hunting during a hunger disaster like ours, but because he can't share what he has caught in his hunting expedition, he ties some stake on his waist. So when he's talking to his children, he tells them, if you want to eat something, Benda Matago, cut part of your skin and eat. Then when they try to cut, of course, because it's painful, they can't. Then he himself goes and cuts that piece of meat which has tied in his and eats. It speaks to greediness. That metaphor. It's a wrong, misplaced, metaphor. But as it were, because somebody is not thinking, they just speak. And they don't understand that today information flies faster than anything. So anyway, as far as we're concerned, we are marching with the Zambian people steadily. And we will not disappoint the Zambian people.
And
Everything has been properly considered, calculated. We know the Mengarat of UPND, and we know where they are going, what they are attempting to do with everybody they have employed, and they want to deploy to destroy PF. We have read their script back and top and bottom. And we are determined to make sure that within the Mengarat they are playing, we will play super political, moves that will get the Zambian people's aspirations and desires not be betrayed in 2026.
we had the elections in Botswana as well, where Masisi just lost the election, terribly lost, I should make mention. There was a dismal performance that he puts up on this political party, which had stayed in power for 58 years from the time of independence, only to be defeated now, and they came out fourth. Why is the... Let's look at also, I'll combine this question with the Joe Biden, the appetite by the electorate worldwide. It appears, why should they go and recall a former head of state to come back to state, or White House rather, unlike maybe going for a new political party in this regard? Why should we be going back and forth? I'm asking this question because the same agenda which the Patriotic Front is also championing, to have ECL again available. Why should it be like that? Why can't we try other leaders or other people?
Arebo agenda has been, and the wind of Arebo has been blowing across the globe. We started with Brazil and other countries, and the other countries emulated, and now we had the similar situation, for example, in Botswana, because basically the victory in Botswana is Ian Khama's victory. He decided to have, Duma as one of his guys that to support. Of course, because they attempted, to block Ian Khama and all those things. He had served all his terms. I think he was not even eligible to stand, but he found, young people that he could support. That wind has blown in one of the biggest democracies that has remained more or less like a model. I think this only happened, according to what we're getting, about 135 years ago or 33 years ago, where a president lost and then later on re-elected. So Donald Trump has broken record, and we think that in Zambia we actually are going to break record of having a former ruling party bounce back. We are very convinced that it will bring maturity and sanity in our democracy, because opportunistic politics will come to an end. Donald Trump's victory speaks to many positive things. I know there are people who want to zero in and start examining it in temperaments and so on. That's secondary. These are peripheral issues. The real issue is examining his policy position and what has been consistent about. And he strikes most of us like a person who has a dual personality. He has this loud side of him, but he's a man of faith. He seems to really anchor his discourse publicly on the values of Christianity. And for Zambia, and I think many African countries who are quite religious and have their reverence towards God, believe that this gentleman would be a good catalyst to allow Africans express themselves, with their religious way of approaching things, would express themselves and be able to have their, potential unlocked, and then this will lead to, I think, a greater, form of success economically, improvement of people's welfare, cleaning up the governance system of our respective countries, so that our democracies begin to thrive. And because there's no interference, we think that we'll be able to utilize even our own resources, effectively. We think that with his approach to things of what he has pronounced and promised, we will be able to see the Russia-Ukraine war, come to an end. We expect that the Gaza challenge there will come to an end, because I think his approach is more practical than anything else. Joe Biden's were talking of wanting to intervene in the Russia-Ukraine war, but they were the ones fueling the war by sponsoring one of the, the warring parties. And NATO was actually the cause for which that war started, because of the proximity to Russia and obviously threatening the sovereignty of Russia and its military and security, measures that were played. So Ukraine was just a victim and is being used by the support of the US to continue looking like they can fight and so on. But that fight is really not even a Ukraine fight. It's a fight, Russia against NATO, but using a conduit, in this case Ukraine. We think that that's in practical terms. We think that Donald Trump will be more practical, looking at even the message that came from Zelensky prior to the election and now that which has come after the election. It shows that we may not see that war continue for a longer period of time, unless he behaves like Misaka Ndechirema, who made one promise and came and did something opposite. But we're confident that he'll be able to follow through, because he's quite a tenacious leader, determined leader, looking at how against all odds he was able to fight and wage an effective campaign, and he has gone back to the Oval Office.
Let's speak to the political activities that will be happening tomorrow as we wind up the program, Honorable SG. I know that Tonse will be officially launching its alliance tomorrow. And what is the position of the Patriotic Front in that regards over these political alliances? I know that PF or ECA was part of the is part of the UCA alliance as well. And I think some 3 weeks ago, you held a central committee where you, as a chief executive officer of the PF, you gave now, you were given a report, and you produced or you released some new rules of engagement for any political party that would want to associate with you. There are some guidelines in that regard. What is the fate of the PF in the UCA at this moment?
I don't think there's any issue of fate of PF in UCA. Right. Okay. Let me talk about Tonse first of all. We have been, receiving calls from the Zambian people, appreciating the fact that even if we are a very strong opposition political parties, in view of the facts that can never be disputed, we have 58 members of parliament, a few disgruntled, who I think along the way will come in line. We have over 40 council chairpersons and mayors. We have close to 500 councillors across the country. Okay? We have a membership structures across the country. There is no other political party that is as big as PF in terms of structural layout across the country. Not even the UPND. The UPND may have come into office because there was this wind and hype and so on, but in terms of structural arrangement and machinery, PF still beats UPND, because they are areas where UPND doesn't exist, to which PF exists. But we exist in areas where UPND is a stronghold. I hope you understand. So the call for a united front in the opposition is clearly motivated by the fact that the Zambian people don't want to gamble. They want a clear and clean victory in 2026 because they can't stand having UPND continue beyond 2026. Hence our open door policy. There are some political parties that were quick and willing to work with us, like those that came and worked with Patriotic Front under the UCA umbrella. But as it were, UCA and the membership is not enough. We have been approached by others. I can tell you that we also have been able to approach others in terms of encouraging them to hear what the Zambian people are calling for, a united opposition front. Among those that approached us was the Tonse alliance platform. And at that time when we approached us, we also as a party going through a process of introspection. Are we really engaging in a manner that to guarantee success of these alliances? We felt that any relationship that is not properly defined is doomed to fail. So the best is that let's retreat, and therefore we set up another committee to go and interrogate this idea of alliances in a democratic setup. So they inquired both locally and internationally and came up with what was the minimum benchmarks, if you like, eventually translated into rules of engagement. And those rules of engagement were shared to all those who cared to listen. And those who are progressive looked at them, interrogated them, and accepted that I think this way we can be able to make progress, and came up with a criteria to which every member, whether political or non-political players, will be able to participate in this movement to help the Zambian people and be able to save them from the turmoil they're going through. So as far as PF is concerned, our approach is all-embracing. We are not into the business of wanting to pitch this against the other. We are into the business of bringing everybody together. It's not an easy undertaking. We have to be firm, focused, sometimes look like we're a bit rough, but we also engage in diplomatic warfare, negotiating with colleagues, having tough conversations where we ask tough questions to bring each other to reality, so that at the end of the day, the question of the desires of the Zambian people to have the UPND leave office in 2026 is answered squarely. This is not child play. So to that effect, being the largest opposition political party, we are what you may call in Bemba and Koko. We have to bring everybody together. So we have UKA on this side, and for as long as UKA is ready to be progressive in terms of engagement and discussions, we are available.
What has been the response from UKA when you engage?
We have not exhausted that process, but
Right.
we are in a hurry to make sure that everybody comes on board. Because if, for example, we take long to respond to Tonse, take long to respond to others, we may actually be losing an opportunity for everybody, including UKA.
How did you find yourselves in UKA in the first place as SG? And later on, you realized that I think we need to put up a roadmap, some rules of engagement.
No, we found ourselves in obvious on the principal position that the idea of working together from the demands of the Zambian people is something that is a must, and therefore an opportunity presented itself, and therefore we formed this movement and began a process of refining ourselves. But in that process, we noticed that there could be some gaps. Some of the gaps are emanating from the fact that we went in ourselves, and maybe we didn't really set some benchmarks that would help our colleagues relate with us in a more clearer manner without assumptions.
In short, you went into UKA in the first place in a disorganized manner.
No, you're using a wrong term. You understand what I'm saying? I don't know, you're married?
Yes, I am.
If you're married, I don't know how you met your wife. I mean, it's clear that possibly you find there are people who fall in love, they meet somebody at the supermarket and so on, buying bread and things like that, and you say to each other, hi, I love you too, we love each other. Can we even talk about issues of marriage? And you start dating, going to movies and so on, then you discover, if we are just going to be going to movies and doing all these things, without defining clearly how we're going to operate. Let me ask tough questions. Do you go to church?
Yes,
Which church do you go to? Oh, yeah. Okay, I also go to church. How many children do you want, if you get married, do you want to have? Oh, I mean, maybe 3 or 5. Oh, I think we have common ground. And begin to define those things. So that even when you're getting married, you are able to achieve some level of compatibility for purposes of having that relationship work. So there was nothing wrong in us finding common ground in terms of responding to the Zambian people. It's just a process now we're undertaking that is getting us to even define clearly how this very healthy relationship will even be fostered to a greater height to work to save and meet the interests of the Zambian people. We are not in an attitude of wanting to say this one is good, is bad, that's one, no. Everybody else is good, provided on that platform we are honest to each other.
So at this moment, it appears the Party Front, you want to be the main anchor of these alliances. Whoever wants to work with you, according to your statement,
yes,
they have to agree to the terms and conditions that have been put up by the Patriotic Front. So you'll be the main vehicle. Everybody should come on board, is it?
Well, that's...
Or are you willing to compromise? For example, if IP has got a political party, then I want to work with you. Then I say, okay, fine. You as PF, let's work on an equal basis.
Listen, let's face reality.
Yeah.
From our findings, there is no alliance that has ever worked without you acknowledging that you need an anchor political party. Right. Okay? And in this case, the reality is that Patriotic Front, as it stands today, is the anchor opposition political party. It's a reality. We come to the table with all the things I've talked about. And therefore, when I come to IP, who with good intentions and possibly effective as a person in his quest to save the Zambian people as a politician, has formed a political party. But he still has just a political party among a nephew and a few friends and so on and so forth. It would be unrealistic to suggest that Mr. IP now has become an equal partner with the Patriotic Front. Okay? Whilst we have to respect and appreciate the input of IP and his political party, they must also accept that we have an anchor political party that will carry us. Because the machinery of this political party is what we're going to depend on for us to be able to be, effectively contest in the next election. So those are fundamentals that you can't debate. But again, it can't be assumed that because you have come and these are realities, you have the mindset to appreciate the anchor political party, or indeed the anchor political party will have the mindset to appreciate the effective and important role you are playing in this arrangement. Hence the rules of engagement. To say this is the role you are going to play, this is the role this other political party is going to play. But as an anchor political party, we are the only ones who have locus to bring everybody together. Because as it stands now, the most beautiful, beautiful, beautiful platform that everybody is roasting for, or is it, yearning for, is that of Patriotic Front, and is that of the fact that we also have a cerebral candidate in Edgar Chagwalongo. And everybody is saying, Harebwe Rapo agenda is what the Zambian people are singing in the bars, in churches, in the markets, on the streets, at the farms, and everywhere else, in the mines, both formal and informal. Everywhere you go, people are saying, and now, even America is singing the same song,
Will I be right, or perhaps a viewer out there, will he or she be right to sense some forms of selfishness in you and the Patriotic Front where these alliances are concerned, in that it appears you just want everything to be about yourselves, and I'll tell you one thing. It reminds me a story of the UPND and how they started their UPND alliance. There were a lot of confusion. There was a lot of confusion. Some people even jumped out of the ship of the UPND alliance. One of them was the NDC under Honorable Chimbakambwe at the time, which led to the division where Honorable P.S. Agafumba remained in the UPND alliance while CK went to the other side. Because the argument at the time was that we need to find a neutral name for this alliance. You can't take us into the UPND. We're going to be puppets. We look like we're parrots by of the UPND. And we've got, for example, Sean Temba as well is a person who stood firm. We said, look, we need to have a neutral name. And UPND was accused that they were being selfish by bringing people or being the main anchor, unlike finding a neutral name. Aren't you also exhibiting the same tendency of being selfish? It's like you want everything to be about yourselves. You can't compromise.
I don't know what question you are trying to ask. But first
it's
of
about
all,
your selfishness.
and
perhaps maybe the perceived
I don't know
hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy in terms of what?
In terms of the same things which the UPND, the same character put up the UPND.
No.
Which is what you're also trying to portray.
No. Don't insult us by comparing us to UPND, please. Leave UPND with their demons on their own. I mean, we have too much to deal with the UPND and looking at even the way they have performed. I think give us a bit of credit in terms of our decency to be honest with the colleagues. We have not deceived anybody. I've featured on this platform. I've had press briefings. The president has expressed himself from the very day he came back from into active politics. You can go to his speech. There's nothing sinister about our engagement with colleagues. Okay? Even for us to retreat and say, can we have rules of engagement, which we have publicly pronounced, how can that be that we are being selfish? We are telling you, this is how we're going to relate. How can that be selfish? The UPND, we are deceiving friends. We don't practice deceit ourselves. We face each other in each other's eyes and say, this is how you are going to relate with me, and can you tell us whether it is acceptable to you? It's as simple as that. That's how it works, whether it's business, it's politics, in diplomacy and so on. You must have everything put on the table, defined. Then you can be able to bargain.
Well, it's again, UCA, they seem to have their own rules as well. They're saying you can't have a political party which is already in an alliance belonging to another political another alliance.
That's what I'm saying.
So
that
perhaps how are you going to handle these issues?
No. We are. It's a process. In this case, why do you want to suggest that PF is the one that is selfish when we are saying let this movement be an all-embracing? And we're saying if UCA has come, I mean UCA is there and Tonse has come, what is wrong with embracing Tonse? Why do you want to have a closed shop? Why do you want to have an exclusive club of the few? When the Zambian people are saying this is a serious matter, we want all of you to work together, get the best human resource from everybody, assemble, have a formidable team, and be able to represent us and possibly have a chance to be able to govern us, govern this country better than what we're experiencing now. How can it be that we're selfish in wanting to work with everybody? I think it's a misplaced assertion.
Yeah,
but I want to tell you further answer that we have not insisted. Right. That's how come we're comfortable with the pronouncement of UCA, just like we're comfortable with the pronouncement of Tonse. We have not said say PF. No, we have said what is it that the Zambian people are demanding for. Any platform that speaks to unity, that speaks to people coming together, we will embrace it.
Tell me something. Will PF be part of the Tonse launch tomorrow?
Yes, we will 100% are going to be part.
ECL be there as well?
Wow, ECL is going to be part of the launch.
Right.
Yeah. In one form or the other, he will be part of the launch. Well, of course, it's a press briefing. We have speakers that are going to speak at that press briefing. And as PF, we're going to participate, in terms of endorsing the formation of Tonse and launching Tonse and being able to have all the processes that have been proposed unveiled to the Zambian people tomorrow. And we'll proudly participate. And we're doing this in good faith. We're not doing this as an affront against anybody. No, we're just saying let everybody come on board. And we're saying this to everybody. This movement towards 2026 cannot be a movement of an exclusive club. No. This movement is for everyone. We are going to utilize every resource, including that of a former president, to bring everybody, including those who may have misunderstood this movement. We'll convince them because we think we have superior argument in relation to what the Zambian people are going through and what is needed for us to answer to their needs. So we are not intimidated by misunderstanding and perceptions and people misconstruing this and that around whatever it is. When you are right and you are moving on the right path, you are confident that along the way people will come and see that you meant well. If we are peddling deceit, lies, and the manipulation and so on, maybe we'll be afraid of being found out. But for as long as it's a sincere movement, an honest movement, we are confident that even those who are afraid, who are not sure, along the way will discover that we mean well. President Lungu means well. PF means well, for the sake of the Zambian people.
So you don't mind to belong to 5-4 alliances? It doesn't matter for
we don't mind bringing all these social groupings, political groupings together.
Right.
It's not about belonging, it's bringing them together.
As the main anchor.
Yes. You know, that's the role my father used to play, Ichikolwe. Children would be there, misunderstanding each other. But there's always a way in which this Ichikolwe would say, come and come. Then they come to appreciate that the differences actually are minor compared to what should be able to bring them together. So those who are, you know, squeaking in that corner and that corner, please, that's not the main agenda. The main agenda is unity.
I wish we had enough time to speak to these issues, Honorable SG, really, because you earlier spoke about relevance of these political parties, and you bragged that indeed the PF, and these are facts on the ground, that the PF has got structures across the country, members of parliament, we've got ward councillors, council chairpersons, mayors. But again,
IP, why do you want to deliberately, maliciously suggest that I was bragging when I was just stating facts?
And I've mentioned that these are facts on the ground.
So if I say to you that you're a man, and you agree with me that you're a man, how can that be termed as bragging?
Indeed, I agree with you that facts
use
on the
ground,
ground.
Just use the right term. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying the correct position.
And the facts on the ground is indeed that you've got several members of parliament,
it's a fact,
council
yes.
chairpersons,
yes.
and mayors. But again, let's look at the relevance of some of these leaders or the people behind certain movements. Let's talk about Tonse. When you carry your research, you find that some of these names are people that really, if you check on the ground, their presence, their structures may be questionable. Of course, it's up for debate. It's not me.
That's why
if you go to people's pact as well, you find that these are individuals whose political parties may be called maybe, one man's political parties. And they were your associates, SG, in 2021 or prior to the election in 2021 of an election which you failed or you terribly lost. How are they going to contribute to your victory?
You seem to have some appetite to discredit a process.
You know what, I'm being very careful and selective in my words. I said seemingly.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
We were in Uka, isn't it? And we are in Uka. Okay?
Yeah.
We worked with my good brother, Honorable Karaba. He was even Minister of Foreign Affairs in PF. You understand? We worked with Madam Savoy Mboera, even in the 2021 election.
Yeah.
We worked with Honorable
Although HK didn't work with you in 2021 election.
Which I'm saying we worked together. You are denying that he was foreign affairs.
Right?
Yes, he was foreign affairs.
Yes, that I'm aware.
Okay.
That I'm aware.
And he basically branched off, formed a political party, and participated in an election. And the results are there for everyone to see. Just like we worked with Honorable Sokuwe Scott. I think the new entrance in this situation.
And Honorable Nawak.
Yeah, Honorable Nawak. The new entrance here may just be Madam Katek. We worked with my young brother Jackson Siravo during butane and all those things. Didn't even participate in 2021. So we are not strangers to each other. Just like we worked with the other colleagues in Zambia, we want. Mohabi Lungo was our ambassador in DRC under Patriotic Front, and also was deployed in Washington, D.C. We worked with the likes of some of the colleagues that are in Zambia, we want. Just like we worked with some of the colleagues that were that are in Tonse. Politicians in Zambia is a constituency that has interacted with itself in many ways and whatever. But in this case, we are saying your relevancy, PF, is what I've talked about. The relevance of others, some of them are opinion makers. Some of them, yes, their party is still growing. But as an individual, they are a national personality that the Zambian people feel if put on a platform somewhere, they can be able to effectively save the Zambian people.
Right.
Okay. And to that effect,
take that as your closing remarks as we go.
We are not going to jump into this narrative being created by detractors and wanting to suggest that there's something sinister or hypocritical about our moves. No. Some of the people will not understand it as today. And that's what leadership is all about. It's not everybody that will understand you. Sometimes you have to march on towards the end. They will come and celebrate that actually the decision we made, which we misunderstood, has come to benefit all of us In this case, the benefit we are seeking for is not for individuals to get jobs and position themselves for jobs or indeed seek office. This is the benefit that must first of all accrue to the Zambian people. And then your capabilities as an individual will find you a place for you to contribute.
Right.
And if you are comfortable and confident of what you are able to contribute and the value you bring to the table, you don't have to be scared. Be secure and be confident about yourself. Everybody else in you in the opposition will play a role,
Right.
depending on what their capability is, and will be able to serve the Zambian people effectively, better than these colleagues who have only but brought misery to the Republic of Zambia. Thank you very much.
Honorable SJ, thank you so much.
Good
Appreciate
evening.
you.
Thank you.
All right, we end the conversation this evening. I've been hosting Patriotic Front Secretary General, Honorable Raphael Nachinda. We'll be back again tomorrow with our State of the Nation. Thank you so much. This has been IP. May God bless Zambia. May God bless Mother Africa. Good night.